Behind the glittering grandeur of a lavish ballroom, where every smile is rehearsed and every gesture hides ambition, one silent figure trembles in the shadows, carrying a secret powerful enough to shatter reputations. And when a ruthless tycoon's gaze cuts through the crowd and finds the one woman who never wanted to be seen, fate shifts. An old betrayal rises from the depths, threatening to drag her into a storm she has fought desperately to escape. Yet a single choice now hangs between them: step into the light, or lose everything once more. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from? And what do you love most about historical romances? The grand ballroom of the Vanderbilt mansion glittered under the soft glow of gas chandeliers, their flames dancing like captured stars. It was 1887, the height of New York's Gilded Age, where fortunes were made in steel and railroads, and society's elite gathered to flaunt their wealth in a whirlwind of silk and whispers. Young women in elaborate gowns of taffeta and lace glided across the polished marble floor, their laughter tinkling like fine crystal. They were the daughters of tycoons, heiresses to empires built on coal and cotton, each one a prize in the marriage market of the upper crust. But amid this sea of poised perfection, one figure lingered in the shadows. Isabella Langford pressed herself against the heavy velvet drapes near the balcony doors, her heart pounding like a locomotive in her chest. At 22, she was no stranger to such events. Her father, a modest inventor from upstate New York, had scraped together enough to secure an invitation through old connections. Yet Isabella felt like an imposter in her simple gown of midnight blue muslin, its modest neckline and lack of jewels marking her as an outsider. Her dark curls were pinned simply, without the towering feathers or pearls that adorned the others. She wasn't here to dazzle, she was here to escape. "Why hide, Miss Langford?" a voice murmured from the crowd, low and teasing, but she shook it off. Her secret burned hotter than the scandal that had driven her family from their quiet life. Her father's latest invention, a revolutionary steam engine design, had been stolen by a ruthless rival, leaving them penniless and her dreams shattered. Now, whispers followed her. The fallen daughter, the one whose family teetered on ruin. She couldn't bear the pitying glances or the matchmaking mamas pushing their sons toward more suitable matches. The orchestra struck up a waltz, and the room swirled into motion. Couples paired off, the men's tails swirling like shadows, the women's skirts blooming like roses. Isabella watched from her corner, envy twisting in her gut. She longed for the freedom of those dances, the thrill of a hand in hers, but fate had other plans. A servant passed with a tray of champagne flutes, and she snatched one, the bubbles tickling her throat like forbidden hope. Then, across the room, his eyes found her. Alexander Harrington, the enigmatic tycoon whose name echoed through Wall Street like thunder, stood apart from the throng. At 30, he was a force of nature, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features carved from the same granite as his railroad empire. His black tuxedo fit like armor, a single gold watch chain glinting at his vest. Heir to a silver mining fortune, he'd built his own legacy in transcontinental rails, amassing wealth that rivaled the Astors. But tonight, amid the noble young women vying for his attention, daughters of senators and bankers, he saw only the one who hid, their gazes locked. Isabella froze, the flute halfway to her lips. His eyes, a piercing grey like storm clouds over the Hudson, held no mockery, only curiosity. A slow smile tugged at his mouth, and he excused himself from a cluster of admirers, weaving through the crowd with purposeful strides. She turned to flee toward the balcony, but the doors were blocked by laughing guests. Panic rose. What did he want with her? The hidden one, the nobody. "Miss," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, stopping just inches away. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and leather, enveloped her. Up close he was even more imposing, a faint scar tracing his jaw from some long-ago accident on the tracks. Isabella lifted her chin, forcing composure. "Sir, I believe you've mistaken me for someone else." He chuckled softly, a sound that warmed the chill in her bones. "No mistake. You're the only one not performing for the crowd, refreshing in a room full of peacocks." Her cheeks flushed, bold words from a man who owned half the railways west of Chicago. "And what brings a man like you to notice a shadow?" "Shadows hold secrets," he replied, extending a gloved hand. "Dance with me. Prove you're more than that." The music swelled, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Isabella hesitated, her pulse racing. To refuse would draw eyes. To accept. What doors might it open, or slam shut forever? As his hand waited, steady and sure, she placed hers in it. The touch sent a spark through her, like the first rumble of a coming storm. Little did she know, this single moment would unravel everything, her secrets, her heart, and the gilded world around them. If you're captivated by Isabella's hidden world and Alexander's magnetic pull, hit that like button if you're enjoying the tale so far. And subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below with your city and country so we can connect across the miles. Who knows what secrets we'll uncover next? The waltz enveloped them like a gentle tide, pulling Isabella deeper into the rhythm despite her reservations. Alexander's hand rested lightly at her waist, firm yet respectful, guiding her through the swirl of skirts and polished boots. The gaslights flickered overhead, casting golden halos on the faces around them, smiles frozen in envy or curiosity. Isabella's simple muslin gown felt suddenly inadequate against the rustle of his fine wool suit, but his presence made the disparity fade. His touch was warm through the fabric, a steady anchor in the chaos. "You move like you've danced this 1,000 times, he said, his voice low, meant only for her ears amid the strings and laughter. She glanced up, meeting those storm-grey eyes again. Lessons from a provincial tutor, Mr. Harrington, nothing like the grandeur here. Her words came out steadier than she felt. Who was this man to single her out? Whispers of his ruthlessness preceded him. Deals struck in smoke-filled boardrooms, rivals crushed under the weight of his ambitions. Yet here, in the intimacy of the dance, he seemed almost human. A faint amusement softening the hard lines of his face. "Alexander, please," and grandeur is overrated. It's all facade. He spun her lightly, the motion drawing a surprised breath from her lips. For a moment, the room blurred. The glittering chandeliers, the clusters of dowagers with fans fluttering like judgmental birds. "Tell me, what shadow chases you tonight? You watch the dancers like a spectator at your own execution." Isabella's step faltered, but he corrected it seamlessly, his grip reassuring. How could he see so much? Her family's ruin weighed on her like an iron ballast, the stolen blueprints, her father's weary eyes in their cramped boarding house upstate. Merely observing. Society's games aren't for everyone. He nodded, as if understanding more than she said. "I've built empires on observation. One learns to spot the genuine amid the glitter." The music crested, and he drew her closer for the turn, their faces inches apart. She caught the subtle scent of his shaving soap, clean and crisp, mingled with the faint tang of cigar smoke from earlier conversations. Her heart raced, not from fear now, but from the unexpected thrill of being seen. As the waltz ended, applause rippled through the crowd. Alexander didn't release her immediately, his hand lingering on hers. "Another dance? Or shall we escape to the terrace? The air there might suit a shadow better." She hesitated, glancing toward the balcony doors. The cool night beyond promised respite from the prying eyes that now turned their way, murmurs buzzing like bees. Who was she to accept such an invitation? But refusal felt like retreat, and something in his gaze stirred a defiance she hadn't known she possessed. "The terrace," she agreed softly. They slipped through the French doors, the chill of the autumn evening wrapping around them like a shawl. The balcony overlooked the mansion's manicured gardens, lanterns strung along paths, where couples strolled in hushed tones. New York's skyline loomed distant, a jagged silhouette against the starry sky, dotted with the glow of gas street lamps. Alexander leaned against the balustrade, removing his gloves to light a slim cigar from a silver case. The flame illuminated his scar briefly, a thin white line from jaw to chin. Remnant, she'd later learn, of a derailment in the Wyoming territories 5 years prior. Isabella shivered, pulling her wrap tighter. Her gown, sewn by her own hands from salvaged fabric, offered little warmth. "You risk scandal, inviting me out here alone." He exhaled a plume of smoke, watching it dissipate into the night. "Scandal is my trade. Besides, you're no wilting flower to faint at a breeze." His tone held a teasing edge, lightening the moment. She couldn't help a small smile. Humor, rare in such circles, disarmed her. They talked then, words flowing easier than she'd imagined. He spoke of the railroad's relentless pull. Tracks laid across untamed plains, fortunes won and lost in the blink of an eye. "It's not glory," he admitted, staring out at the city. "It's survival. One wrong bet, and you're dust." There was a weariness in his voice, a crack in the Tycoon's armor that mirrored her own hidden fractures. In turn, she shared fragments of her life, the quiet innovation of her father's workshop, the scent of oil and metal that clung to her childhood. Not the theft, not yet. That wound was too raw, but his questions drew her out, gentle probes that made her feel valued, not pitied. For the first time that evening, the weight on her chest eased. A liveried footman approached discreetly, bowing. "Mr. Harrington, your carriage awaits if you wish to depart early." Alexander waved him off. "Not yet." Turning back to Isabella, he stubbed out the cigar. "Walk with me in the gardens. The paths are lit, and propriety allows a stroll." Her pulse quickened. The invitation tempted, a bridge to something unknown. But as they descended the steps, a shadow detached from the ballroom's glow. Elias Thorne, a sharp-featured banker with a reputation for venomous gossip. He hovered at the edge of the light, his eyes narrowing on them, a smirk twisting his thin lips. Thorne, she knew, had ties to the man who'd stolen her father's design. Whispers linked him to shadowy dealings in patents and sabotage. Alexander noticed, too, his posture stiffening. "Old acquaintance," he muttered, but tension laced his words. Thorne raised a glass in mock salute, then melted back into the crowd. Isabella's unease returned, sharper now. What if Thorne recognized her? What secrets might he unearth, dragging her family deeper into disgrace? As they stepped onto the gravel path, Alexander's hand brushed hers accidentally. Or was it? Sending another spark through the chill, the gardens unfolded before them, roses heavy with late bloom. But the night felt charged, as if eyes watched from every shadow. Little did she know Thorne's gaze followed, plotting moves in a game far deadlier than any waltz. And Alexander's interest. It was already drawing lines in the sand, lines that could upend her world forever. The gravel crunched softly under their feet as Isabella and Alexander ventured deeper into the Vanderbilt gardens, the lantern light casting elongated shadows that danced like wary ghosts. The air carried the heavy scent of late-blooming roses and damp earth, a welcome contrast to the stifling perfume of the ballroom. Isabella's wrap slipped slightly from her shoulders, and she tugged it back, acutely aware of the chill and of him. Alexander walked at her side, his strides measured, giving her space, yet never straying far. His presence felt like a shield, solid and unyielding against the night's uncertainties. "You seem lost in thought," he said after a moment, his voice cutting through the quiet rustle of leaves. A faint smile played on his lips, illuminated by a nearby lantern. "Is the garden not to your liking, or is it my company that troubles you?" Isabella glanced at him, her dark curls stirring in the breeze. Honesty tugged at her, warring with caution. "Both, perhaps. This world. It's not mine. One wrong step, and you're trampled." She paused, watching a firefly flicker past, its glow brief and fleeting, like the hope she dared not name. He stopped beneath a wrought-iron archway overgrown with ivy, turning to face her fully. The scar on his jaw caught the light, a reminder of battles fought far from silk-lined salons. Trampled? I've seen men build fortunes from ruins. Women too, though society pretends otherwise. His grey eyes searched hers, intense, yet kind. "What ruins chase you, Isabella? I sense them, like storm clouds on the horizon." Her breath caught at the use of her name, intimate without presumption. No one here had called her that tonight. To them, she was Miss Langford, a polite afterthought. She leaned against the arch, the cool metal grounding her. "My father's work. An invention meant to change everything, a steam engine that could power mills without waste, but it was taken, stolen in the dead of night from his workshop." The words spilled out, raw and unfiltered, surprising even her. "Now we're adrift in this city, scraping by on echoes of what was." Alexander's expression darkened, not with pity, but a shared fire. He removed his hat, running a hand through his thick dark hair. "Theft in broad daylight, dressed as business. I know it well, patents twisted, rivals vanishing into bankruptcy." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a murmur. "Who took it?" "Names matter in this game. Elias Thorne's associate," she whispered, the name tasting bitter. "A man named Harlan Crow. Thorne bankrolls him. Whispers say they forge alliances in shadowed clubs, crushing inventors like insects." Regret flooded her immediately. Why reveal so much? Yet Alexander's nod held no judgment, only resolve. "Thorne!" he repeated, the word laced with disdain. "A viper in pinstripes. I've crossed him before. Over rail contracts he tried to sabotage." He placed a hand on the arch near hers, close enough that she felt the warmth radiating from him. The gesture was protective, not possessive, stirring something deep within her, a flicker of trust amid the thorns. They resumed walking, the path winding toward a secluded fountain where water trickled in a soothing rhythm. Moonlight silvered the surface, turning droplets to diamonds. Isabella's gown whispered against the grass, edging the path, her simple muslin a stark foil to the opulence around them. She imagined her mother's voice, urging caution. Gentlemen like him collect hearts as they do stocks. But Alexander spoke not of conquests or dowries. He asked of her dreams, of the sketches she'd hidden in her father's old journals, ideas for harnessing steam in ways that could light homes without flame. "You're inventive yourself," he said, admiration threading his tone. "Most women here embroider or play piano. You see mechanisms, possibilities." A soft laugh escaped her, light and unexpected, easing the knot in her chest. "Blame my father. He taught me to dismantle clocks before I could read novels." For a moment the weight lifted, replaced by the simple joy of conversation. Alexander shared a tale then, of his early days surveying tracks in the Dakota Badlands, blistered hands, endless sky, and a near-fatal encounter with a derailment that left his scar. "Pain forges clarity," he concluded, his eyes locking on hers. "It strips away the unnecessary." The fountain's mist cooled her flushed cheeks as they paused there. He offered his arm, and she took it hesitantly, the fine wool of his sleeve brushing her fingers. Electricity hummed between them, unspoken and potent. In that instant, under the stars, Isabella felt seen, not as the fallen daughter, but as herself. Hope bloomed, fragile yet insistent, like the roses defying the autumn chill. but the night's peace shattered with footsteps on the gravel. A figure emerged from the shadows, Elias Thorne himself, his gaunt face twisted in a predatory smile. He adjusted his monocle, the glass glinting coldly. At 45, Thorne cut an elegant figure in his tailored frock coat, but his eyes held the gleam of a man who profited from others' despair. "Harrington and Miss Langford, is it? What a surprising pairing in these gardens." Alexander's body tensed beside her, his arm a steady barrier. "Thorne, eavesdropping now. Your hobbies grow pedestrian." Thorne chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. "Merely ensuring guests are entertained. Though some alliances puzzle me, the Langfords, such a tragic fall from grace." His gaze slid to Isabella, probing, as if peeling back layers. "Heard your father peddles scraps upstate. Pity about that engine. Lost to progress, they say." Isabella's blood ran cold. He knew, or suspected. Her hand tightened on Alexander's arm, drawing strength from his unyielding stance. "Progress built on theft isn't progress, Mr. Thorne," she retorted, her voice steadier than she felt. Thorne's smile widened, revealing teeth yellowed from cigars. "Bold words for one so unmoored. Careful, Harrington. Some shadows swallow even tycoons." He tipped his hat mockingly and retreated toward the mansion, his footsteps fading into the night. Silence fell, heavy with implication. Alexander turned to her, concern etching his features. "He's baiting us. Thorne thrives on division, pitting inventor against magnate." He cupped her elbow gently, guiding her back toward the lights. "But you're not alone in this. Not anymore." As they re-entered the ballroom's fringe, the music swelled anew, couples whirling oblivious to the undercurrents. Isabella's mind raced. Thorne's threat lingered like smoke, hinting at revelations that could expose her family's desperation. Yet Alexander's promise echoed, a lifeline in the gathering storm. What favors might he call in, and at what cost to the fragile bond they'd just forged? Deeper into the evening, as whispers spread of their garden stroll, Isabella wondered if safety lay in retreat, or in stepping fully into the light beside him. But Thorne's parting glance promised pursuit, and the game had only begun. The morning after the Vanderbilt ball dawned crisp and golden over New York, sunlight filtering through the lace curtains of Isabella's modest boarding-house room. She sat at a scarred oak desk, her fingers tracing the edges of her father's worn journal, its pages filled with sketches of gears and pistons that now seemed like ghosts of better days. Sleep had evaded her, chased away by the memory of Alexander's touch, steady, electric, and Thorne's venomous smirk. At 22, with her family's future hanging by a thread, such distractions felt like luxuries she couldn't afford. Yet her heart betrayed her, replaying his words. "You're not alone in this." A knock echoed from the hallway, sharp and insistent. Her landlady, Mrs. Hargrove, a stout widow with a perpetual frown, poked her head in. "Miss Langford, a caller, gentleman with a card." She extended a silver tray bearing an embossed note, "Alexander Harrington, requesting a meeting at noon in Central Park." Isabella's pulse quickened. How bold, to seek her out so soon, bypassing propriety's veils. She dressed hastily in a grey wool daydress, its high collar and fitted bodice modest yet elegant, the skirt falling in practical folds to her ankles, no frills for her. The fabric, bought second-hand, still held the faint scent of its previous owner. Pinning her curls into a simple chignon, she added her only accessory, a locket with her mother's miniature portrait, and stepped into the bustling street. Central Park unfolded like a green oasis amid the city's clamour, horse-drawn carriages rumbling along the paths, while nursemaids pushed prams under the budding oaks. Isabella spotted Alexander near the Bethesda fountain, his tall frame unmistakable in a charcoal frock coat and striped trousers, a silk top hat tilted against the breeze. He turned at her approach, his grey eyes lighting with genuine warmth. "You came," he said, offering his arm. No pretense, just quiet relief. "I nearly didn't," she admitted, slipping her hand into the crook of his elbow. The wool of his sleeve was fine, warmed by his body. They strolled toward the lake, where rowboats dotted the water like leaves on a pond. Ducks quacked lazily, and children laughed from afar, their innocence a stark contrast to the undercurrents swirling in her mind. Last night. Thorne's words linger. He knows too much. Alexander's jaw tightened, the scar pulling taut. Thorne preys on vulnerability, but knowledge is a weapon I can wield too. He guided her to a wrought iron bench overlooking the water, ensuring they were somewhat secluded yet visible. Propriety observed. Sitting beside her, he removed his hat, placing it on the bench between them like a barrier dissolved. "I've made inquiries since dawn. Your father's engine, it's no trifle. Harlan Crowe registered a similar patent last month, under a shell company tied to Thorne's bank." Isabella's breath hitched, hope warring with fear. "Then it's traceable. We could challenge it?" Her hands clasped in her lap, knuckles whitening against the grey wool. "Possibly, but courts favour the deep-pocketed. Thorne's influence runs through judges like rails through planes." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, his voice dropping. "Let me help. My lawyers specialize in such disputes, rail patents, industrial espionage, discreetly, of course." She searched his face, those sharp features softened by earnestness. At 30, he'd forged an empire from silver mines to steel tracks, yet here he offered alliance without demand. "Why? You scarcely know me. This could entangle you in scandal, associating with a family like mine." A faint smile curved his lips, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Because shadows deserve light, and because—" He paused, the words hanging like mist over the lake. "Last night, you saw me, not the Tycoon, but the man scarred by the same relentless world." "That's rare, Isabella." Her name on his lips again, intimate as a secret shared. Warmth bloomed in her chest, chasing the morning chill. They talked then, the conversation meandering like the park paths, from her childhood tinkering in the workshop to his solitary evenings poring over maps by lamplight. He confessed a fondness for simple things, the rhythm of a well-oiled locomotive, the quiet satisfaction of a blueprint realized. She laughed when he mimicked a pompous board member's bluster, her hand flying to her mouth in surprise. "You're incorrigible," she teased, the soundlight freeing attention she hadn't named. As noon bells tolled from a distant church, a public victory unfolded nearby. A group of suffragettes distributing pamphlets near the fountain, their bold voices carrying on the wind. Alexander watched them with approval. "Change brews even here. Women like you could lead it." Emboldened, Isabella shared a sketch from her journal, a modification to her father's design that might evade Crowe's mimicry. His eyes lit with interest, leaning close to study the lines. "Brilliant. Together we refine this." Their heads nearly touched, the moment charged with possibility, their first collaborative spark, a success born of shared intellect. But triumph soured as a shadow fell across the page. Elias Thorne approached from the path, flanked by two associates in somber suits, his cane tapping like a metronome of malice. "Harrington, plotting in the open. How unlike you." His gaze raked over Isabella, dismissive. "And with the inventor's daughter. Desperate alliances?" Alexander rose swiftly, positioning himself between them. "Walk on, Thorne. Your games tire." Tension crackled, the air thick as before a storm. Thorne's laugh was sharp. "Games? This is business. Cross me, and patents become the least of your worries. Rumours, perhaps, of Harrington's indiscretions with fallen sorts." He eyed Isabella pointedly, the threat veiled yet clear. She stood, chin lifted, heart pounding. "Threats won't silence truth, sir." Thorne smirked, tipping his hat before sauntering away, his companions murmuring. The encounter left a chill, the threat to Alexander's reputation now entangled with hers. As they parted near the park's edge, Alexander insisting on seeing her to a hansom cab. His hand brushed hers in farewell, lingering. "This isn't over. Meet me tomorrow. My office is on Wall Street. We'll counter him." Isabella nodded, the spark of their collaboration igniting defiance. But as the cab rattled away, Thorne's words echoed, hinting at deeper schemes. What if their budding alliance drew not just legal fire, but personal ruin? The line between protector and peril blurred, pulling her inexorably closer to the Tycoon's world and its dangers. The clatter of hooves on cobblestones faded as Isabella's hansom cab turned onto Wall Street, the heart of New York's financial pulse beating in the shadow of granite facades. It was the afternoon of that same crisp day in 1887, the sun slanting low through the haze of coal smoke from distant factories. Tall buildings loomed like sentinels, their windows reflecting the frenzy below. Clerks in bowlers darting between messenger boys on bicycles, the air thick with shouts of stock prices and the rustle of ledgers. Isabella clutched her journal tighter, her grey wool dress now dusted with park grit, a stark contrast to the polished brass plaques and liveried doormen guarding the entrances. She hesitated at the heavy oak doors of Harrington Enterprises, the gold lettering gleaming like a challenge. What was she doing here, a inventor's daughter, stepping into the lair of a railroad magnate? Her father's warnings echoed. Tycoons devoured the weak. Yet Alexander's parting words pulled her forward. "We'll counter him." With a deep breath she pushed inside. The lobby buzzed with quiet efficiency, mahogany panels absorbing the echoes of typewriters and hushed negotiations. A receptionist, stern in a starched collar, eyed her skeptically. "Appointment." "With Mr. Harrington," Isabella said, lifting her chin. She handed over the card from the morning, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. Up the wide staircase she went, guided by a clerk, to the second-floor offices, where maps of rail lines sprawled across walls like veins of the nation. Alexander waited in a sunlit study, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms tanned from inspections in sunnier climes. Papers littered his massive desk, blueprints curling at the edges. At her entrance, he rose, a genuine smile breaking the intensity of his focus. Isabella, punctual as a timetable. She stepped in, the door clicking shut behind her. The room smelled of ink, polished wood, and a hint of his cologne, sandalwood, grounding her nerves. "I brought the journal. More sketches." She placed it on the desk, their fingers brushing as he reached for it. The touch lingered a beat too long, a silent current passing between them. He gestured to a leather armchair opposite his. "Sit. Tea?" A pot steamed on a side table, attended by a silent maid who poured and vanished. As Isabella settled, the chair enveloping her like an embrace, Alexander pored over the pages. His brow furrowed in concentration, grey eyes tracing her lines with the same care he might a critical junction. This valve modification, ingenious. It bypasses Crow's flaw, channels pressure without rupture. Pride warmed her cheeks. Father's base, my tweaks, steams temperamental, one leak, and dreams flood away. She leaned forward, pointing to a gear diagram. Their heads drew close, shoulders nearly touching, the warmth of him chasing the room's draft. In that shared scrutiny the world narrowed. No Wall Street wolves, no Thorne's shadows, just possibility humming like a well-tuned engine. Alexander straightened, fetching a ruler and fresh paper. "Let's refine it, together." He sketched beside her notes, his hand steady, voice animated. "Here, reinforce the piston with alloy from my foundries, stronger than iron, lighter too." A chuckle escaped him as he smudged a line. Forgive my penmanship, better with a hammer than a quill. Isabella smiled, the sound soft, easing the knot of doubt. Better than my father's chicken scratches. He once labelled a boiler the beast, and forgot why. Their laughter mingled, light as morning mist. A rare bubble of humour amid the stakes. For the first time since the theft, ideas flowed freely, unburdened. Alexander's enthusiasm mirrored hers, his questions probing not to dominate, but to build. What if we adapt it for rail tenders? Efficient fuel could shave hours off cross-country runs. Excitement sparked in her eyes. Yes, and safer. No more boiler blasts claiming lives. They worked in rhythm, the afternoon slipping away in a haze of graphite and tea refills. His gaze met hers often, holding longer each time, a silent acknowledgement charged with unspoken affection. When their hands overlapped on a diagram, neither pulled away immediately. The gesture spoke volumes. Trust, budding deeper than words. As shadows lengthened, their collaboration yielded a prototype outline, solid, promising. Alexander leaned back, satisfaction etching his features. This could reclaim your father's legacy, and more. He covered her hand with his, thumb tracing a gentle circle. You've a gift, Isabella. Don't let shadows dim it. Her pulse raced at the contact, warmth spreading like sunlight. In his eyes, she saw not pity for her fall, but admiration for her fire. The moment stretched, intimate, until a knock shattered it. His secretary entered, face pale. Sir, urgent wire from the patent office. Thorne's firm filed an injunction, claims prior art on similar designs. Hearing tomorrow. Alexander's grip tightened briefly on hers, then released. Fury flashed in his eyes, but he masked it with resolve. Expected, will prepare. To Isabella, softer. Stay for the evening. Review counters. She nodded, heart swelling with their shared triumph, yet the threat loomed, Thorne's web tightening. As the secretary left, Alexander's gaze lingered on her, protective, pulling her closer to his orbit. But whispers from the hall hinted at prying eyes within his own ranks, loyalty tested, alliances fracturing. What if their success invited betrayal from those nearest him? The line between ally and adversary blurred, drawing them into a storm neither could evade alone. The gas lamps along Wall Street flickered to life as evening deepened, their flames sputtering against the encroaching dusk. Inside Alexander's study, the air grew thick with the scent of fresh ink and cooling tea. The prototype sketches spread like battle plans across the desk. Isabella traced a finger along the refined valve diagram. Her grey wool dress rumpled from hours of leaning forward, curls escaping her chignon in soft tendrils. The collaboration had ignited something fierce, a shared vision that made the room feel alive, pulsing with potential. Alexander's hand still hovered near hers, the warmth of his touch a quiet anchor amid the mounting storm. "We've got it," he said, his voice low and triumphant, grey eyes meeting hers with a spark that went beyond blueprints. "This design stands on its own, unassailable. Thorne's mimicry crumbles against true innovation." He rolled up the papers carefully, tying them with a silk cord, his movements deliberate, as if sealing a pact. Isabella's heart swelled, the weight of her family's loss lifting just a fraction. For the first time since the theft, hope felt tangible, forged in this unlikely partnership. Their eyes locked, the silence stretching. Charged, intimate. His thumb brushed her knuckles lightly, a gesture so tender it stole her breath. In that moment, amid the Tycoon's domain, she glimpsed the man beneath, the one who built empires yet yearned for connection, just as she did. But the secretary's wire hung over them like a thunderhead, Thorne's injunction a venomous strike. Alexander paced to the window, overlooking the street where gaslight pooled on cobblestones, carriages clattering homeward. "He moves fast, too fast. Someone tipped him, fed details of our work." His scar tightened with the clench of his jaw, suspicion etching deeper lines. Isabella rose, smoothing her skirt, the wool whispering against her legs. "Within your own offices, no? It can't be." Yet doubt crept in, cold as the evening chill seeping through the panes. Whispers from the hall earlier, had they been more than idle chatter? A clerk's averted gaze, a hurried note passed. The success they'd just claimed twisted into peril, Thorne's shadow reaching even here. Alexander turned, his expression hardening yet softening for her. "Betrayal's the cost of power, but we'll root it out." He stepped closer, cupping her elbow gently, guiding her to the door. "Go home now. Rest. I'll summon my most trusted man tonight. Discreet inquiries. Meet me at dawn tomorrow, the same spot in the park. We press on." She nodded, reluctance pulling at her as he helped her into her cloak, his fingers lingering at the collar. The brush of his breath near her ear sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear, but the slow burn of affection building, layer by layer, like steam in a sealed chamber. "Be careful, Alexander. Thorne doesn't strike alone." His smile was fierce, reassuring. "Neither do I." With a final glance, one that promised more than words, he saw her to the street, hailing a hansom under the watchful eyes of passers-by. The cab jolted forward, wheels rumbling over uneven stones, carrying Isabella through the twilight streets of Manhattan. Tenement lights winked from alleyways, the city's underbelly contrasting the gilded heights she'd glimpsed. Her mind raced. Thorne's web, Alexander's resolve, the fragile spark between them. What if their alliance shattered under scrutiny? Society's tongues already wagged about the ball, the garden stroll. This venture into his world could brand her irreparably. Back at the boarding house, Mrs. Hargrove bustled in the hall, her apron dusted with flour from evening biscuits. "Miss, a letter arrived, urgent, by messenger." She thrust an envelope into Isabella's hands, sealed with black wax, no return address. Isabella's fingers trembled as she broke it open in her room, the single gas jet casting wavering shadows. The script was elegant, anonymous. "Cease meddling with Harrington. Your father's folly ends in ruin if you persist. Return north, or truth surface, ones that bury inventors and tycoons alike." No signature, but the threat reeked of Thorne, his style in every veiled barb. Panic surged, hot and sharp. She crumpled the note, stuffing it into her journal. Sleep evaded her that night, the city's distant horns and clanging bells mocking her unrest. By pre-dawn, she slipped out, the air crisp with frost, her breath clouding as she hurried to Central Park. The paths lay empty, save for early sweepers raking leaves, the lake a mirror of grey sky. Alexander arrived on horseback, dismounting with fluid grace, his greatcoat billowing like a cape. At first sight of her pale face, concern flashed. "What is it?" He tied the reins to a post, drawing her to the bench, his gloved hand enveloping hers. She handed him the note, words tumbling out, the arrival, the warning. His face darkened as he read, crumpling it in his fist. "Coward's ploy, but it confirms a leak, inside or close." He scanned the tree line, as if expecting spies in the mist. "My man uncovered whispers last night. A junior clerk, paid off by Thorne's runners. He's been dismissed, but damage lingers." Relief mixed with dread. "Then we fight the injunction? Expose the theft?" Alexander nodded, pulling a small leather pouch from his coat. Inside, a delicate gold brooch shaped like a locomotive wheel, simple yet exquisite, its pin glinting. "For luck and, a token. Wear it tomorrow at the hearing. Know I'm with you." He fastened it to her lapel himself, his fingers steady, eyes holding hers with unspoken depth. The metal warmed against her chest, a symbol of their bond, fragile, yet unbreakable. Emotion welled, tears pricking her eyes. "Alexander, this risks everything for you." "For us," he corrected softly, his voice a murmur. He leaned in, forehead nearly touching hers. the world fading to just them. The air hummed with tension, affection blooming in the quiet, a glance, a shared breath, deeper than any declaration. But hoofbeats shattered the moment. A rider approached fast. Alexander's foreman, face grim under his derby. "Sir, bad news. Thorne's men raided your foundry at dawn, claimed inspection rights. Blueprints missing, sabotage suspected." Alexander's grip tightened on hers, fury blazing. The threat had escalated, striking at his core. As the foreman reined in, detailing the chaos, twisted gears, scattered plans, Isabella realized their success had ignited a war. Thorne wouldn't stop at papers. He'd burn bridges, literal and figurative. With the hearing looming and betrayal's scent fresh, could they withstand the blaze, or would it consume the spark they'd kindled, leaving only ashes in its wake? If you're rooting for Isabella and Alexander's triumph amid the rising threats, hit that like button if you're enjoying the story so far. The first rays of dawn pierced the frost-kissed treetops of Central Park, turning the world to pale gold as Alexander vaulted back onto his horse, his greatcoat snapping in the chill wind. Isabella stood frozen on the path, the gold brooch at her lapel catching the light like a defiant spark. The foreman's words hung heavy. Thorne's men, cloaked in false authority, had torn through the foundry under the guise of an inspection. Blueprints vanished, machinery tampered with, the heart of Alexander's operations left in disarray. Her stomach twisted, their hard-won prototype, the sketches born of yesterday's fervor, now teetered on the edge of ruin. "Stay here," Alexander commanded, his grey eyes fierce with urgency. "I'll handle this." But she shook her head, stepping forward, her grey wool dress sodden at the hem from the dewy grass. "No, this touches my father's legacy too. We're in it together." Her voice held steady, fueled by the brooch's weight against her chest, a reminder of his quiet vow. He hesitated, then nodded, offering a hand to boost her onto the saddle behind him. She mounted awkwardly, her skirts bunching, arms wrapping around his waist for balance. The horse surged forward, hooves pounding the earth, carrying them out of the park and into the awakening streets. The ride blurred in a rush of cold air and clattering wheels from early vendors. Isabella pressed against Alexander's back, feeling the taut muscles beneath his coat, the steady rhythm of his breath. It was improper. This closeness, scandalous even for shadowed alleys, but desperation forged its own rules. His scent enveloped her, leather and resolve, chasing away the night's fears. For a fleeting moment, amid the chaos, warmth bloomed in her core, a silent admission that his nearness steadied her more than any plan. They reached the foundry on the East River's edge as the sun crested fully. Its sprawl of brick buildings and towering smokestacks silhouetted against the water. Workers milled in confusion, their faces smudged with soot, hammers idle in calloused hands. Chaos reigned, crates overturned, gears scattered like broken teeth, the air thick with the acrid tang of disturbed oil. Alexander dismounted swiftly, helping Isabella down with a firm grip that lingered on her waist. "Show me!" he barked to the foreman who led them inside. The main workshop lay gutted. Blueprints, once pinned meticulously to walls, were shredded or gone. A massive lathe, key to forging their alloy parts, bore deep gouges, its blade bent as if by deliberate malice. Isabella knelt by a pile of debris, sifting through papers until her fingers closed on a fragment, a torn corner of their valve sketch, marked with her own notations. "It's ours," she whispered, holding it up. Ink smeared, but the lines were unmistakable. Alexander's face hardened, the scar along his jaw standing white against flushed skin. He snatched a nearby lantern, illuminating scorch marks on a workbench. Arson attempted, but doused before flames took hold. "Thorne's handiwork. No mere inspection leaves this." His voice rumbled low, anger laced with calculation. Workers gathered, murmuring loyalties, one burly smith stepping forward. "Boss saw 'em, 3 men in inspector's badges, but one dropped this." He proffered a silver cufflink, engraved with a thorny vine motif. Thorns insignia whispered about in banking circles. Rage flickered in Alexander's eyes, but he reined it in, clapping the man's shoulder. "Good eye, double guards tonight, salvage what you can." Turning to Isabella, his tone softened. "We rebuild. Faster." He guided her to a side office, away from prying ears, the door shutting with a decisive click. Dust motes danced in the slanted light, the room sparse, a desk scarred from years of use, shelves of ledgers, a single window overlooking the river's murky flow. She sank into a wooden chair, exhaustion crashing over her. How? The hearings today, without proofs. Her voice cracked, the brooch suddenly heavy, a talisman mocking their fragility. Alexander knelt before her, taking her hands in his, calloused from reins and rails, yet gentle. "We have this fragment, your journal, my testimony." His thumbs traced circles on her palms, the touch igniting a quiet fire, drawing her gaze to his. Up close, in the raw light, she saw the weariness he hid, the faint lines from sleepless nights, the depth in his eyes that spoke of isolation amid fortune. "Isabella, this raid, it's panic. Thorn fears us because we threaten his grip." Her breath hitched at the intensity, the way he said her name like a promise. She leaned forward, forehead resting against his, the world narrowing to their shared warmth. "And you? Risking your empire for a shadow like me?" Tears pricked, but she blinked them back, her fingers squeezing his. "You're no shadow." His voice dropped to a murmur, one hand rising to tuck a loose curl behind her ear, lingering at her cheek. The gesture was tender, charged with the slow build of something profound, no grand declarations, just the pull of souls recognizing kin. Time suspended, the river's lap outside a distant lullaby. In that vulnerability, affection deepened, a bridge forged in crisis, her heart yielding to the man who saw her fire. A shout from the workshop shattered the moment. They pulled apart as the foreman burst in. "Sir! Found more, hidden in the rafters. Full set of your rail tender's blueprints, untouched, but a note pinned to 'em." He handed over a slip. "Back off the Langford farce, Harrington, or your tracks derail next, permanently." Alexander crumpled it, standing tall. "He's overreached. This proves coercion." Fury blazed, but resolve steadied him. To Isabella, "The hearing, we go now, dressed for battle." He fetched a spare coat from a hook, draping it over her shoulders, his touch protective. As they emerged into the yard, workers cheered faintly, loyalty rallying. But Isabella glimpsed a figure slipping away at the perimeter, a cloaked messenger vanishing toward the docks. Thorn's reach extended, spies embedded deep. The hearing loomed, a public arena where whispers could become weapons. With proofs salvaged but threats escalating, could their bond withstand the scrutiny? Or would Thorn's next strike sever it, leaving her heart and their dreams in irrevocable pieces? The courtroom in the old federal building on Foley Square hummed with restrained anticipation, its high ceilings echoing the shuffle of feet and the rustle of starched collars. It was mid-morning, the sun slanting through tall windows to gild the wooden benches where spectators crammed, reporters with notebooks poised, society matrons fanning themselves against the stuffy air, and a smattering of Wall Street sharpies eyeing the proceedings like hawks over a kill. Isabella sat rigid in the front row, her grey wool dress exchanged for a sombre navy bombazine, its fitted bodice and full skirt a shield of respectability. The gold brooch pinned at her collar gleamed subtly, a secret talisman against the knot of dread in her stomach. Alexander stood at the bar, his broad shoulders squared in a tailored black frock coat. the white line of his scar stark under the gaslights that supplemented the daylight. His grey eyes scanned the room briefly, locking on hers with a nod of quiet assurance before turning to the judge, a portly man with mutton chops and a reputation for favouring established interests. Thorne lounged at the opposing table, his thin frame impeccable in pinstripes, a smug curl to his lips as his lawyers shuffled papers. Harlan Crowe sat beside him, a weaselly figure with slicked-back hair and fidgety hands. The thief incarnate. The bailiff called the session to order, gavel cracking like a starter's pistol. Thorne's counsel rose first, a silver-tongued attorney named Pritchard, his voice oily and precise. "Your Honour, my client seeks to protect legitimate innovation. The Harrington-Langford claims infringe on prior art, Mr. Crowe's registered design filed months ago. Any so-called theft is baseless conjecture from desperate parties." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, Isabella's fingers twisted in her lap, the brooch pressing cool against her skin. Desperate. The word stung, echoing the boarding house's thin walls and her father's hollow cheeks. But Alexander's lawyer, a grizzled veteran named Ellis, countered swiftly, presenting the salvaged blueprint fragment, her journal sketches, and Alexander's affidavit detailing the foundry raid. "This is no infringement, Your Honour. It's plagiarism, plain and predatory, evidence of sabotage, cufflink from Thorne's own crest, proves coercion." The judge peered over his spectacles, the room holding its breath. Thorne leaned to whisper to Pritchard, his monocle flashing. Isabella caught a glimpse of Crowe's nervous glance her way, guilt flickering before he averted his eyes. Alexander testified next, his voice steady as iron rails. "I've built lines across this nation, sir. I know theft when it derails progress. Miss Langford's father pioneered this engine. Crowe stole it. Thorne bankrolled the lie." Questions flew, technical barbs about valves and pressures that Isabella answered from the stand, her voice clear despite the tremor in her knees. "The design channels steam without waste, Your Honour. Crowe's copy risks explosion, unsafe for mills or rails." The matrons whispered behind fans. A reporter scribbled furiously. Alexander's gaze never left her, supportive, igniting a quiet strength. In the crossfire of stares, she felt their bond solidify, a partnership forged in fire, his pride in her evident in the subtle tilt of his head. Pritchard pressed hard, dredging her family's fall. "Miss Langford, your circumstances. Motive for fabrication." The insinuation hung, painting her as a schemer. Heat rose in her cheeks, but she met his eyes. "My motive is justice, sir, not gold." Applause erupted from the back, workers from the foundry, smuggled in by Alexander's men, drowning the objection. As the judge deliberated, recess called, the courtroom emptied into the hall's chaos. Alexander found her near a marble pillar, away from the throng. "You were brilliant," he murmured, his hand brushing her arm lightly, the touch a spark in the tension. Up close, his cologne cut through the stale air, steadying her. "Thorne's sweating, see his fidget?" She managed a small smile, the first in hours, her hand grazing his sleeve in return, a fleeting gesture, laden with gratitude and more. "Because of us. Together." Their eyes held, the hallway's bustle fading, affection swelling in the pause. Unspoken, yet profound. His thumb traced her wrist briefly, a promise amid the fray. Thorne passed then, close enough for his cane to tap warningly near her foot. "Enjoy the spotlight, Miss Langford. It burns out quick." His voice dripped venom, eyes narrowing on their proximity. Alexander stepped forward, a wall of resolve. "Save your threats for the judge, Thorne. Justice derails vipers, too." The man smirked and sauntered off, but the encounter chilled the air. Back in session, the judge ruled, injunction denied, Crowe's patent under review for fraud, investigation into the raid ordered. Cheers erupted, reporters surged forward, flashes of notepads like lightning. Isabella's heart soared, the victory public, triumphant. Alexander pulled her aside in the exodus, his smile genuine, rare. "We did it. Your light outshone the shadows." In the courtroom's echo, as congratulations swirled, he leaned close, voice for her alone. "Dinner tonight? To celebrate, quietly." Her nod was swift, pulse racing at the invitation, a step deeper into his world, their connection blooming like dawn after storm. But as they exited into the square's bustle, a messenger boy thrust a note into Alexander's hand. "Thorns calling in markers, watch your rails tonight." The elation soured, victory won, but war far from over. Shadows lengthened with the afternoon sun, hinting at retaliation in the dark. Could their fragile alliance endure the backlash, or would Thorn's fury fracture it before affection could take root? The afternoon sun dipped low over Foley Square, casting long shadows across the federal building steps as Isabella and Alexander emerged into the throng. Reporters swarmed like locusts, notebooks thrusting forward, questions barking about the ruling, the raid, the Tycoon's unlikely alliance with the inventor's daughter. Isabella's navy bombazine skirt swished against the stone, her heart still racing from the courtroom's electric close. The judge's gavel had sealed their win, Crow's patent suspended, Thorn's web exposed under scrutiny, an official probe into the sabotage set to unravel his dealings. No chains for them, no cells, just the sweet sting of vindication, public and unyielding. Alexander's arm brushed hers as he steered her through the crowd, his frock coat rumpled yet commanding. "Keep moving," he murmured, his voice a low rumble amid the chaos. His grey eyes scanned the faces, ever vigilant, the note from the messenger boy burning in his pocket like a lit fuse. Thorn's retaliation loomed, rails to watch, markers called in. But for now, triumph coursed through Isabella's veins, warming her like fine brandy. She glanced up at him, their shared glance holding a depth that words couldn't touch, a silent vow forged in testimony and trust. They slipped into a waiting brougham, the door slamming shut on the clamour. The carriage lurched forward, wheels rumbling over uneven pavement toward a quiet supper house in the village, far from society's prying eyes. Inside, the leather seats creaked softly, the privacy allowing Isabella to exhale fully. "We won," she whispered, her hand finding his on the seat between them. His fingers closed over hers, strong and sure, the calluses from rail ties a textured reminder of his world. "Step one," he replied, his thumb tracing her knuckles in slow circles. The motion sent a quiet thrill through her. Affection blooming in the confined space, no grand gestures, just the steady build of something real, resilient. Thorns cornered, his bluff on the rails, a desperate lash. Leaning closer, his breath warm against her temple, he added, "And tonight we celebrate. No shadows." The supper house nestled on a cobblestone lane, its gaslit windows glowing like embers. A private parlour awaited, table set with crisp linens, silver gleaming under a single chandelier, candles flickered, casting golden pools on the damask walls, the air scented with roasted fowl and fresh bread. They dined slowly, oysters on ice, tenderloin in wine sauce, conversation weaving between light reminiscences and deeper confessions. Alexander spoke of his orphaned youth, scraping silver claims in Nevada's dust. Isabella shared her mother's lullabies, sung over workshop clatter. Laughter slipped in, soft and unexpected, when he mimicked the judge's mutton chops, drawing a genuine smile from her lips. As dessert arrived, poached pears in syrup, his gaze held hers across the candlelight, intense yet tender. "Isabella, this. Us. It's more than patents or proofs." He reached for her hand again. The touch lingering, charged with the day's catharsis. "You've lit paths I thought long dark." Her pulse quickened, cheeks flushing under his scrutiny. "And you've pulled me from hiding. For the first time, I feel Scene. The words hung, intimate, the room shrinking to just them. No kisses, no haste, just the profound pull, eyes locked in silent promise. Hearts aligning like perfectly meshed gears. But peace fractured with an urgent knock. The proprietor entered, face ashen, a telegraph flimsy in hand. "Mr. Harrington, sir. From your foreman. Urgent." Alexander snatched it, his expression darkening as he read. Isabella leaned in, dread coiling. Derailment attempt on the Hudson line. Saboteurs caught. Thorne's men, with forged orders. But he's fled his offices, assets freezing by dawn. Fury blazed in Alexander's eyes, but resolve steadied him. Endgame. He stood, helping her to her feet, his grip firm. "We finish this, now." The brougham raced back to Wall Street, night fully fallen, gas lamps blurring into streaks. Thorne's brownstone loomed dark, but lights flickered in an upper window, hubris or trap. They approached on foot, Alexander's men flanking discreetly, shadows in the fog. Isabella's heart pounded, the brooch at her collar a steady weight. "Stay back," he urged, but she shook her head, slipping a small derringer from her reticule. Her father's gift, loaded for precaution. The door yielded to a hidden key from a loyal clerk. Upstairs, Thorne paced his study, maps and ledgers scattered. A half-empty decanter on the desk. At their entrance he whirled, monocle askew, face paling. Harrington and the girl, bold, barging in. "No more games," Alexander growled, stepping forward, Isabella at his side. "Your saboteurs sing already. Ties to Crow, the raid, the theft, the probe seals it. Your empire crumbles by morning." Thorne's laugh cracked, desperate. "Proof? Hearsay from scum." But his eyes darted to Isabella, venom fading to fear. "Langford, your father's engine was fair game. Innovation demands ruthlessness." "Fair?" Isabella's voice cut sharp, stepping into the lamplight. "You crush dreams for profit, but truth endures." She placed the journal on the desk, open to their refined sketches, irrefutable, now backed by witnesses and wires. Thorne slumped, the fight draining. "What do you want? Ruin me utterly." Alexander's tone iced over. "Confess publicly, return the patent, compensate the Langfords, or the law, clean, relentless, does it for you. No blows, no arrests, just the weight of exposure, society's scorn turning on the viper." Defeated, Thorne nodded, scribbling a retraction, signing over rights. Dawn broke as they left. The city stirring, Thorne's confession wired to papers and officials. By noon, headlines screamed, Tycoon's fall, inventor's justice. Alexander's rails secured, his reputation burnished. Isabella's family restored, her father's workshop reborn under their joint venture. Weeks blurred into healing. The Langfords relocated to a bright Brooklyn home, steam engines humming anew. Isabella and Alexander's bond deepened in stolen moments, strolls by the Hudson, quiet suppers, culminating in a simple engagement under autumn oaks, rings exchanged with vows whispered like secrets. In the end, love triumphed, unbowed by guilt or greed. Thorne faded to obscurity, his price paid in exile and shame. For Isabella, the hidden one no more. The world gleamed with possibility, rails stretching endless, hand in hand with the man who'd noticed her light. If this victory has you cheering for Isabella and Alexander, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another thrilling tale from the Gilded Age. 5 years had woven their gentle threads through the fabric of Isabella and Alexander's lives, transforming the raw edges of 1887 into a tapestry rich with quiet joys and enduring strength. It was 1892 now, and the Brooklyn brownstone they called home stood as a testament to resilience, a sturdy Victorian with bay windows overlooking the East River, its iron fence blooming with climbing roses that Isabella tended each spring. No longer the modest boarding house or the Tycoon's shadowed offices, this was their sanctuary, built from the profits of the steam engine venture that had revolutionized rail tenders across the nation. Factories hummed with their design, safer and more efficient, carrying passengers and freight without the spectre of wasteful blasts or stolen dreams. Isabella Harrington, at 27, moved through the sunlit parlour with the grace of one who had claimed her place in the world. Her once simple muslin gowns had given way to elegant day dresses of soft wool and silk, the navy bombazine of courtroom battles a distant memory. A string of pearls, Alexander's gift on their wedding day, rested at her throat, simple yet luminous, much like the life they had forged. Motherhood had softened her features, adding a warmth to her dark eyes and the faint lines of laughter around her mouth. In her arms, she cradled little Elias, named not in spite. Thorn's shadow long faded, but in quiet reclamation, a boy of 3 with his father's grey gaze and her inventive spark, already dismantling wooden toys with chubby fingers. The wedding had been intimate, held under those same autumn oaks in Central Park, where their alliance had deepened 2 years after the confrontation in Thorn's study. No grand society affair, just family and a handful of loyal friends. Her father, now vigorous at 60, overseeing a thriving workshop. Alexander's foreman promoted to partner, and a few railroad engineers who had testified in their hour of need. Vows exchanged at dusk, with the Hudson's murmur as witness, sealing a love that had grown not in haste, but in the steady rhythm of shared trials. "You've been my light in every shadow," Alexander had whispered then, his hand steady on hers, the scar along his jaw catching the lantern glow like a badge of battles won. Alexander entered from the garden path, his broad frame filling the doorway, dust from the rail yards clinging to his boots. At 35, time had etched deeper lines of wisdom into his face, but the fire in his eyes burned brighter, tempered by domestic peace. He shed his greatcoat, revealing a vest of fine tweed, and crossed to them in 3 strides. "My inventors," he said, voice warm as aged whiskey, pressing a kiss to Isabella's forehead before scooping Elias into a hug. The boy squealed, tugging at his father's watch chain, a gold fob engraved with a locomotive wheel, the same motif as her brooch, now passed to their son. Isabella watched them, her heart swelling with a nostalgia that bordered on ache. How far they had come from that Vanderbilt ball, where a hidden glance had sparked it all. The engines they perfected together powered lines from New York to Chicago, employing hundreds, including women in the assembly shops. Isabella's quiet advocacy, ensuring fair wages and training. A nod to the suffragettes she had admired, that fateful Park day. Society had shifted too. The Gilded Age's excesses mellowed into progress, with reformers pushing for safer labours and honest patents. Their story, splashed in papers as the Tycoon's hidden muse, inspired whispers of equity in boardrooms, though Isabella preferred the privacy of home. Yet not all threads tied neatly. Harlan Crow had slunk into obscurity, his mimicry exposed, living in penury on a rundown farm upstate, a cautionary tale traded in inventors' circles. Elias Thorne paid the highest price, exiled to Europe after the probe unearthed ledgers of bribery and sabotage, his banking empire seized, family scattered in disgrace. Last word came via a yellowed clipping, penniless in Paris, shunned by old allies, his monocle pawned for bread. Justice, cold and unrelenting, had claimed him without a single courtroom chain for Isabella or Alexander. He forged his own cage, Alexander would say, no triumph in his tone, only the somber reflection of a man who knew ambition's double edge. As evening fell, the family gathered in the dining room, gaslights casting a golden haze over the oak table laden with roast lamb and fresh-baked bread. Isabella's father joined them, his once weary eyes now bright. regaling Elias with tales of Steam's magic, carefully edited, sans the theft's sting. Alexander sat at the head, his hand finding hers under the tablecloth, fingers intertwining in that familiar electric hold. Conversation flowed. Updates on the latest rail extension, Isabella's sketches for a home dynamo to harness small engines for lighting. No electricity yet, but their ingenuity bridged the gap with gas and ingenuity. Later, as Elias slept upstairs, they retreated to the parlor settee, a quilt draped over their laps against the autumn chill. Alexander drew her close, his arm a steady weight around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. The river lapped outside, a rhythmic echo of their early walks. "Do you ever miss the storm?" he murmured, his breath stirring her curls. She tilted her face to his, eyes meeting in the firelight's glow. "Only because it brought us here." Their lips brushed, a soft, lingering touch, born of years, not urgency, sealing the endurance of a love that had weathered thefts and threats, blooming eternal like the roses in their garden. In those quiet moments, nostalgia wrapped them like a warm shawl, the past a foundation, not a chain. Their children, Elias and the babe yet to come, would inherit not just fortunes, but the lesson. Shadows yield to light when two hearts align. The Gilded Age had gilded their path, but it was their unyielding bond that turned base metal to gold. As the fire crackled softly in the parlor hearth, casting flickering shadows that danced like memories across the walls, Isabella nestled closer to Alexander, her head on his shoulder, the steady rise and fall of his chest, a rhythm as familiar as the river's eternal flow. 5 years had not dimmed the spark that first ignited in the Vanderbilt ballroom's glow. If anything, time had polished it, turning fleeting glances into a legacy of love and perseverance. The Gilded Age, with its glittering facades and hidden thorns, had tested them fiercely. Theft, sabotage, the venom of men like Thorn who clawed for power at any cost. Yet here they were, not just survivors, but architects of a brighter dawn, their engines powering not only rails, but the quiet revolutions in homes and hearts. Isabella traced the gold fob on Alexander's watch chain, her fingers lingering on the engraved wheel, a symbol of the journeys they'd shared. "We've built more than machines," she murmured, her voice soft against the night's hush. "We've shown that even in a world of shadows, one true connection can light the way." He turned his head, pressing a kiss to her temple, his grey eyes reflecting the flames, warm, unwavering. In that gaze, she saw the lessons etched into their story. Courage blooms in vulnerability, justice prevails when truth stands unbowed, and love, patient and profound, outlasts the tempests of ambition. Their family had grown, a testament to resilience. Elias, now a curious 5-year-old, with his mother's inventive mind and his father's steadfast spirit, scampered through the garden by day, piecing together model trains from scraps of wood and wire. The babe, little Sophia, arrived in the spring of that year, her cries filling the brownstone with new life, her tiny fists clutching at the pearls around Isabella's neck, as if claiming her inheritance of strength. Her father, once bowed by loss, now thrived as the venture's chief engineer. His workshop expanded into a bustling hub where apprentices, men and women alike, learned the art of creation without fear of plunder. Society had evolved too, whispers of reform echoing through parlors and patents offices, inspired in part by tales like theirs: the hidden woman who refused to stay concealed, the tycoon who chose alliance over isolation. Thorn's fate lingered as a somber footnote, a reminder of hubris's price. Exiled across the Atlantic, he scraped by in dingy London lodgings, his once sharp monocle gathering dust, his name a caution in financial circles. No grand revenge had been needed. The law's steady hand, fueled by their evidence, had dismantled his empire brick by brick. Harlan Crowe fared little better, eking out a meager existence in the upstate wilds, his stolen designs gathering cobwebs. They paid dearly, not through vengeance, but through the inexorable turn of consequence, proof that shadows, when exposed, dissolve under the light of integrity. Alexander shifted, drawing her into his arms fully, the quilt enveloping them like a shared dream. "And what of us?" he asked, his voice a gentle rumble. "We've turned gold into something richer. Family, purpose." She smiled, the nostalgia swelling into gratitude, a profound emotion that wrapped around her heart. Their love had withstood the gales, emerging not scarred, but strengthened, a beacon for those navigating their own gilded trials. In every challenge they'd learned that true wealth lay not in fortunes amassed, but in bonds forged through fire. Trust earned glance by glance, hand in hand, until it became unbreakable. As the clock chimed midnight, the river outside whispered its ancient song. Carrying their story forward into the endless night, Isabella closed her eyes, content in the knowledge that their path, once fraught with peril, now stretched wide and welcoming. For anyone listening to this tale of hidden lights and unyielding hearts, remember, in the grand ballroom of life, it's often the one who dares to step from the shadows who changes everything. What touched you most in Isabella and Alexander's journey? The spark of their first dance, the fire of their fight, or the quiet triumph of their enduring love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let your words connect us across the miles. And if you made it to this heartfelt close, type light right now to show you've journeyed with them to the end. It helps spread these stories to more dreamers like you. Don't forget to check out the cards for similar tales of romance and resilience from the Gilded Age. Your next adventure awaits. Until then, may your own shadows yield to the light within.